Ladies and gentlemen, today is the 7th of November. This is the algebra course, and our subject for today is y equals mx plus b. We're going to be going over this incredibly quickly. I'm sort of assuming that you've already calculated how to find the slope before and how to find the intercept before. And we're just going to be putting that into a function. You have done that. In the last 2 weeks, we've been doing mx plus b form. I just haven't called it mx plus b form. The essential question for today is, what is the connection between the four representations? The representations were a diagram, a table, a graph, and algebra. We're going to do 2 of them today, the table and the graph, and then the last one, the algebra, we're saving for next time. And I have some vocabulary to define before we start. Here is the vocabulary for today. X, let me use black. Black is good. X1 is, it has the little 1 on the bottom, and that means the first x. So if you had a list of x's and you wanted to specify, look at the first x, you would put the 1 on the bottom here, and then x2 means the second x. And so it's the same way, if it was y1, that would mean the first y. Okay, so we need that to find the difference. Does anybody remember I told you that the word difference has a single symbol? Does anyone remember that symbol that means difference? Go ahead. Is it a circle or a square? It's a triangle. And that's actually the Greek letter for D, delta, and it's delta for difference. So you could, maybe we should have been writing D for difference. And actually, in calculus, you do. So calculus uses this kind of weird scribbly D to mean difference. So you would see dy, and that would mean the difference in y. But we're using capital delta, and that means difference. And then there's some synonyms or alternative meanings. It could also mean changes. Or literally what it means is to subtract. It literally means that you're subtracting these two values in x. So if I wanted to do the difference in x, that would be, I would subtract them because difference means subtract. It would be x2, the second x, minus x1, the first x. So the word problem for today, I have a student in my first period called Clemente, so I named it after him. Please write all the way in words. Clemente is buying Girl Scout cookies. 3 boxes of cookies cost $14, and 5 boxes of cookies cost $22. Question we're answering for today is, how much are 7 boxes? So the input value was B for boxes, and the output was C for cost. And now I can go ahead and label in the problem what my inputs were and what my outputs were. So my important information, I've got 3 boxes. There's one number. I have the number $14. That must be important. There's a number for 5 boxes, and those cost $22. And I'm going to label those as the inputs and outputs. X is for inputs, so I'm labeling this because I've input 3 boxes. And that's the first input, so I'm going to say it's x1. So x1 means this is the first input. x2 is the second input. This is y1 because it's the first output. And then this one over here needs to be y2 because it's the second output. So I have labeled the 2 inputs, 3 and 5, and the 2 outputs, 14 and 22. And so I'm going to summarize what somebody in my first period called them clues. They said write your clues. The way I say is write your knowns. What numbers does the problem tell me? It tells me 2 input-output pairs. It told me, just hold it for a second, you got it. So it's the first input and output. I'm going to label them x1 and y1, and then the second input and output, I'm going to label them x2 and y2. Farmers, go ahead. What was the first input? That was an output because remember that it was cost came out, green came out. So 14 came out, so what blue went in? How many boxes cost? Okay, that was for a different value. How many for $14? No, 5 costs. Okay, yeah, that was 22. I got it. How many cost 14 was my question? 3. So the first input was 3. The second input was 5. The first output was 14. The second output was 22. And that's called writing your clues. So if you wanted to call that step 1, the step 1 is write your clues. Or write down your notes. All right, so now I'm going to turn these into a table. I like to turn my data into a table because it's a little bit more organized for me. So the input variable was boxes, and the output variable was the cost of the boxes. And I only know 2 input-output pairs, but I'm going to move all the way down here because I'm going to leave room for the missing numbers. So 3 should go about right here. I know 3 gives me 14. And I know 5 gives me 22. And then let's fill in the rest of the values in this domain. So I'd like it to always start at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I wanted to know how much 7 boxes of cookies cost. So let's go all the way up to 7. 6, 7. So I want to continue these numbers until I get up to 7. And to do that, I need to know how fast the numbers are changing. So what are the numbers going by? Somebody could probably guess it. Yeah, Kibby. Yeah, I love that reasoning. Every 2, so skip 1, every 2 gives you plus 8 more. And that means if you skip 2, go to 7, then it's going to be plus 8. The next one's going to be 30. Very good job. So absolutely, that's the common sense way of doing it. There's a particular way, though, about finding the slope. So if a teacher wanted to teach you a series of steps that you could always follow, he would be teaching you the slope. And here are those steps. Step 1. First, I am going to figure out how fast the numbers on the right are changing. And I'm going to call that delta y, which represents how fast the numbers over here are changing. And then I also want to know the numbers on the left, how fast they are changing. And that's delta x. And that's the difference, so I'm going to be subtracting. And notice that this goes from the 3 to the 5. It's pointing to the 5, not to the 4. So the difference between 3 and 5. And to find that difference, I'm going to subtract. So delta y means subtract. It means subtract the second y, y2, minus the first y. And that's going to be 22 minus 14. And what is the difference between those two numbers, 14 to 22? It is 8. Okay, I'll make it bigger in a sec. So delta y, I made a little bit bigger, is 22 minus 14. The difference between these numbers is 8. In other words, I would have to add 8 between those two. I never did answer the question, though. Using common sense, what would go here? 14 what, 22? Go ahead, Kibby. Yeah, how'd you get 18? Right, so in between those two would be 18, and so just common sense tells you that these are counting by 4s. So 14, 18, 22, 26, 30. But if you weren't using just common sense, here's how to do it step by step. So the common sense answer to what the slope is it's going up by 4s, because the next one's 18. But if I wasn't using common sense, I would need to use this value here. So this is the change in y, 8, and I still need to find the change in x. So first I find the change in y. I'm going to highlight, let's call this first. So this is step 1. First you find the change in y. Then I find the change in x. What's the difference between 5 and 3? Subtract those two numbers, 5 minus 3. It's 2. So the space between 3 and 5 is 2. So that means that this changes by 8 every time this changes by 2. So the cost of the cookies changes by 8 every time I buy 2 boxes. If I pay $8 more for 2 boxes, then how much is each box? How'd you find 4? Adding or subtracting or what? Adding? Okay, so let's look. So common sense says that the answer is 4, and we're not sure how to do it math-wise. Math-wise, the answer is you divide. So I'm going to do that in this box over here. How much is each box of cookies? Here's how to do it. First, you find the change in y, and you put it on top. That's how much the numbers are changing on the right-hand side. Then you find the change in x. On the next page, somebody here might tell me that it's the slope is the rise over the run. And that's exactly what this means. This is still the rise and this is still the run. And when we do this next page, you'll see that what that means graphically. And so that means that the numerator is 8 and the denominator is 2. And so, Michael, what is 8 divided by 2? 4, exactly like you told me. And exactly like common sense said, the table goes by 4s. So let's label this box the slope box. So I have calculated the slope, and it took 3 steps. I found the change in y, I found the change in x, and then I divided. So this was subtract, so I subtract, subtract, divide. Subtract the right, subtract the left, then divide. Is everybody clear about that? Okay. All right, so I'm going to clean this up a little bit before I go on. All right, so it goes 14, 18, 22. What comes next, Mario? 14, 18, 22. We're going by 4s. Mario, 14, 18, 22, 20. That would be up by 6 because the difference is 6. I wanted the difference to be 4. No, plus 4. Oh, I was just talking to Mario. So 22 plus 4, 26. Okay, one after that. Somebody? Go ahead. 30. And now let's work backwards. We're going to work backwards to find the starting value. So 22, 18, 14, 10, 6, 2. Not 0. It does not start at 0. It starts at 2. Okay, and now in the middle, we're going to put a process. That process is going to tell us what the function is. Now remember that each box of cookies costs 4. So this is 1 box of cookies, so I'm going to put 4. This is 2 boxes of cookies, so that's box of cookies, box of cookies. Don't draw this, okay? I'm going to draw this, and then you're going to erase it. So there's 2 boxes of cookies. Each box is 4. And then here's 3 boxes of cookies. Box, box, box. Kibby, are you going to suggest a different way of writing this? Yeah. What is it? That's true. It's kind of like powers. Wait, no, never mind. No, you're not. I mean, no. Okay. Carlos, this is 4 how many times? 1 time. This is 4 2 times. This is 4 3 times. So if I didn't want to write all these 4s, then I could just put 4 times, not 4 times 4. 4 1 time, 4 2 times, 4 3 times, 4 4 times. This is 4 no times. It's okay to have 4 no times. 4 times 0 is 0. Okay, and then so the 4 does not change throughout here. Yes, Kibby? Kibby has already identified that this works for the pattern, but there's something we haven't taken into account. Look at where the input is 0. So the input equals 0. If you look right there, that tells you what you have to add in addition to make this work. 4 plus 0 you have to add 2 or else it's not going to work. Do you always add 2? 4 times 1 plus 2 is 6. 4 times 2? 4 times 2. 4 times 2? 8 plus 2? 10. Okay, so it looks like this is always going to work. Let's spot check it. 4 times 5? 4 times 5? 20 plus 2? 22. Okay, it's still working. So if I wanted to generalize, remember that this is the input value and it's the letter B. So if I put 0 in, it goes there. If I put 6 in, it goes there. So if I wanted to generalize for any letter B, it would be 4 times whatever the boxes are, B, and then whatever that is, after that you add 2 to it. That wasn't recorded. Over on the left-hand side, please write, how do you use a table to find a function? Reminder that this was 4b plus 2, so how did we use a table to find that function? All right, so I am going to give you this summary. You should write this yourself, but I'm going to make sure that you've got everything right. First, write down your clues. I really like how the young man said it this morning. So what does the problem tell you? Write it down. In this case, it tells you x1 and y1. Sometimes, though, it'll tell you the slope, so you have to write down m equals and so on. Okay, step 2, make a table. I'm going to just say ins and outs. So turn your input and outputs values into a table. To find the slope, first, that's the right-hand side. Then, that's the left-hand side. So I'm going to divide, and what I'm dividing is the change in y divided by the change in x, and that's going to be the slope. And it's how fast the numbers, that's not hashtag, it means numbers, are changing. In this case, the numbers are changing by 4 each time the left-hand side changed by 1. So all I'm figuring out is how fast the numbers change. The numbers change by 4 because every box that you add adds 4. And that's the slope. Okay, the last step, look for where the input is 0. That's how much you add. In this case, it was plus 2. So the slope tells you what you multiply by, and then you look where the input is 0, and that tells you how much you add at the end. So this is the multiplier, and this is the constant term.